The hot trend on the big screen these days is the musical biopic. Hi everyone, welcome back to Plain English. I'm Jeff. JR is our producer, and this is episode 202. All the episode resources for this episode can be found at plainenglish.com/202. That includes video lessons, flashcards, and a faster version just for members of Plain English Plus. Coming up today, the first song ever played on MTV was Video Killed the Radio Star by the Bugles. But today, video just might be saving the radio star. That's because the musical biopic is one of the hottest trends on the big screen, and they're breathing new life into older music. The phrasal verb we have for you is pass off as, and it's Monday, so we have a quote of the week. Elton John, Freddie Mercury, and Aretha Franklin. Most of us recognize these superstars as musical artists, but what else do they have in common? These artists, along with many others, have recently been depicted in musical biopics. What is a biopic? A biopic, an abbreviated word for biographical film, is a film that depicts the life of a person, and it's one of the hottest genres in Hollywood right now. Perhaps the most famous lately has been Bohemian Rhapsody. If you haven't seen it on the big screen or on a streaming service, Bohemian Rhapsody is about the lead singer of the rock band Queen. His name was Freddie Mercury. The title Bohemian Rhapsody comes from one of their most famous songs. The movie has been a tremendous success, grossing over $900 million worldwide and winning 4 Oscars. After the movie was released, the song Bohemian Rhapsody became the most streamed classic rock song of all time, and it became the most streamed song from the 20th century, according to Universal Music Group. If there were a category for the most stubborn earworm, that's a song you just can't get out of your head, then it might just win that prize too. In addition to Bohemian Rhapsody, several other biopics have been released or will soon be released. Rocketman, portraying the life of Elton John, was released in May. I saw that one at home a couple of weeks ago, and I thought it was excellent. I was more an Elton John fan than a Queen fan. Yesterday is a fictional film featuring music from the Beatles that came out last spring. Blinded by the Light, with music from American rock legend Bruce Springsteen, premiered in August of this year. And Amazing Grace, a concert film starring soul singer Aretha Franklin, became available this month on Hulu. Respect, another Aretha Franklin biopic, is due for release in August 2020. Bob Dylan will get a biopic, as will Judy Garland. Now, if American and British music isn't your thing, then maybe you've seen the Netflix series on Luis Miguel, one of Mexico's most famous singers. Luciano Pavarotti will get his own biopic too. So why all the recent popularity of musicians in film? One major reason is the demand from audiences for more content. Streaming services like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime are hungry for content. At the same time, music streaming services like Apple Music and Spotify let people discover more music than ever before. The two can be used together. You can easily watch biopics on Netflix, then turn around and listen to the artist's music on Spotify. The two types of streaming are symbiotic. They enhance one another. Another reason for the increase in popularity is that streaming provides another, stream of revenue. They can breathe some new life into the reputation of an aging superstar and revive his or her back catalog. Older music today has to continuously compete with newly released music. There's so much music coming out today that younger audiences might not be familiar with older music. So biopics give them a good way to explore some of the popular music of the past. Movie making is a business, and it's increasingly a cutthroat one. To make a lot of money at the movies, you can either produce a mega hit or produce a normal hit but for a lower cost. The cost of production for biopics tends to be less than for feature films. A good biopic can cost $40 to $50 million to produce. A lot of money, sure, but still much less than many other blockbuster feature films. They tend to be safer, too, from a business perspective. If you have a popular artist as the subject, then chances are good that people will go to see the movie. Lower cost to produce and lower risk is the financial formula that some of these biopics are following. Movie producers want new and fresh ideas, and musical biopics offer unique content. I hate to say it, but sometimes you can't make this stuff up. Real life, especially with musicians, can be more entertaining than fiction. Music also lets movie makers take some creative license and experiment with new concepts. While some biopics, like Bohemian Rhapsody, are more straightforward life stories, others can be more complicated. For example, Elton John's Rocketman took on a more musical approach, and watching the movie feels like watching a musical. There are live-action scenes interspersed with musical performances like what you would see in musical theater. Movies such as Yesterday and Blinded by the Light take yet a different approach. The central characters in both movies are not the musical artists themselves. Instead, the music is woven into the story. In Yesterday, for example, a struggling artist suffers an accident, and when he wakes up, he realizes that nobody in the world knows who the Beatles are. So he brings Beatles music to the world, passing it off as his own. The artist Ed Sheeran had a supporting role in the film and lent some star power to it. Blinded by the Light, in that film, a Pakistani British teenager finds inspiration in Bruce Springsteen's music. So what do the artists, record labels, and in some cases, estates of major artists think about all this attention? Well, it depends on how involved they are in the process of making the biopic. The more they are involved in the creative process, the more likely they are to give their nod of approval and cooperate in the project. For example, before Aretha Franklin passed away, the Queen of Soul personally approved Jennifer Hudson, the American R&B artist, to portray her. Brian May and Roger Taylor, band members of Queen, had a lot of input into Bohemian Rhapsody. A biopic portraying the life of reggae artist Bob Marley is in the works with Paramount Pictures, alongside Ziggy Marley, Bob Marley's son. Yoko Ono has approved of a film featuring herself and John Lennon. So many family members and record labels want the ability to provide input to control how the story goes. The artist's input and cooperation is important, as is the cooperation of the rights owners of the music catalog. That doesn't necessarily mean the artists are lobbying to have themselves portrayed as saints, though their influence might muddy the waters. Here again, Bohemian Rhapsody and Rocketman diverge. Rocketman is rated R, and Elton John didn't want the film to shy away from his turbulent past. Drugs, sex, divorce, broken family relationships. I mean, the film opens with Elton John in a rehab meeting. Bohemian Rhapsody, on the other hand, has been criticized for going easy on some of the more controversial parts of Freddie Mercury's life. My favorite biopic has to be Walk the Line, about American country singers Johnny Cash and June Carter. The music, the acting, the story, all of them are great in that one. I liked Selena too, and Gloria, about Gloria Trevi, was also a good one. Gloria Trevi said about her biopic, she said it was hard to watch. Now that was an example. Actually, all three of these, Walk the Line, Selena, and Gloria, they're examples of biopics that don't shy away from showing some of the more difficult parts of an artist's life. Quick reminder before we get started on the phrasal verb, we have a thriving email community here at Plain English. And once you're part of the email group, you'll get messages from JR every Monday and Thursday. And those messages will have even more free English learning resources. For example, we explain one more English word or phrase from the program that we didn't get a chance to describe on the podcast. It's a great way to learn more English phrases, and you know they're authentic because they came straight from the audio of this very program. Now, if that sounds like it would be useful to you, please join us at plainenglish.com /mail. We have a phrasal verb for you today, and I'm not going to lie, it's a hard one. The phrasal verb is to pass something off as. The definition of this phrasal verb is to make people believe that one thing or one person is actually something or someone else. You make people believe that one thing is actually something else. It's not exactly a lie, but if you pass one thing off as something else, there's definitely some deception involved. In the movie Yesterday, the main character suffers an accident. He wakes up and finds out that the Beatles never existed. He's the only one in the world who knows who the Beatles were. Think about it. One of the biggest bands of all time. You know all their songs, and to everyone else, they never existed. So the young man starts playing Beatles songs, telling people that they were his own songs. He passed the Beatles' songs off as his own. He tried to make people believe they were his, when in fact they were originally from the Fab Four. I wrote this episode in New York, and if you go to Chinatown down by Canal Street, you can find people passing off cheap merchandise as original designer products. Handbags, jeans, glasses, accessories, things like that. Hey, what am I talking about? You can find that anywhere in New York, not just in Chinatown, but it's especially bad by Canal Street. Street vendors are passing off cheap shoes as Louis Vuitton. They're passing off cheap glasses as Gucci. They're passing off cheap handbags as Prada. They're not Louis Vuitton, not Gucci, not Prada, but the sellers are passing their cheap goods off as these expensive brands. Now, the buyers know that, but the sellers are trying to make you believe their goods are something that they're not. The buyers are in on the secret, but they're still passing the goods off as those expensive brands. Actually, maybe the buyers are the ones passing the goods off as luxury goods when they show them off to their friends. Now, in both these examples, there has been an element of cheating. In Yesterday, the character tells people that the Beatles songs were his own. They weren't. And on Canal Street, people say their goods are designer. They're not. Here's another way to use pass off as. You can pass yourself off as something that you are not. Have you ever been with someone at dinner and the person tries to pass him or herself off as an expert at choosing wine, but you know they have no clue? They're just pretending? That drives me nuts. Just admit you only know the basics like the rest of us. In the telenovela that I'm watching in Spanish, one of the characters, Jose Luis, goes to work at a big estate. He passes himself off as simply a farm laborer, nothing more. In fact, he used to be in the Navy, and he's the ex-boyfriend of the beautiful Montserrat, the wife of the owner of the estate. He passes himself off as a simple farm worker, but he's really so much more. He passes himself off as one thing, but he's really something else. Time for a quote of the week. I usually try one of two things. Either I try to pick a quote about the main topic, or I try to pick one quote that's famous in history, food for thought, if you will. Today's is just plain funny. It's really famous from one of the great orators of the English language, Mike Tyson. That's right, the famous boxer Mike Tyson. Here's the quote. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. It's a famous quote. I've heard it dozens of times, but I saw it somewhere this week. I think in an article about the Yankees. They lost a playoff series to the Houston Astros. The Yankees were prepared. They had a good team. They had a chance against Houston, but they ran into some unexpected problems, injuries, some people playing badly at exactly the wrong time, and their plan fell apart. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Now, it's not just funny. The wisdom behind the quote is that you can have a great plan, but your plan will be tested. Things will change. You have to be able to adapt to the change, to be able to adapt when things start to go wrong. So, the next time you hear someone say they have a plan and it's perfect and nothing can possibly go wrong, here's what you say. You say, well, as the great Mike Tyson once said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. That's all for today. Thanks for joining us this Monday. We'll be back with a brand new episode for you on Thursday, like always. If you've enjoyed today's episode, then I know you'll love Plain English Plus. It's our new membership program that lets you get even more out of the Plain English experience. You can listen to this very same episode only at full speed, so you can train your ear to see just how these words sound at native speed. Test yourself to see if you can understand all the words. We also have video lessons and flashcards for each episode, so you'll want to be a part of it. To do that, please visit plainenglish.com/plus, PLUS, plainenglish.com/plus.